The Activision Blizzard fiasco continues to develop, ladies and gentlemen, after the state of California issued a lawsuit that exposed their awful work culture that has enabled abusers, harassment, discrimination, you name it. And among the responses that we've gotten is from J. Allen Brack, who issued a statement that essentially tried to save face and offered empty platitudes, but didn't take culpability and offered no solution. And then the worst one by far was Activision Blizzard executive Fran Townsend's statement, which completely dismissed the allegations from former employees who have been speaking out in solidarity on social media, who've been sharing their individual stories, saying it distorts the facts, it's all out of context, or old stories, and not reflective of the company that she's worked with that has good values, and just completely made a clown show out of genuine allegations that have been reported en masse that need to be taken seriously, that Fran refuses to take seriously, only looking out for corporate interests instead of the victims and the lives of human beings that have been negatively affected in their time at Activision Blizzard, and that has caused a mass ruckus, mass protest, and revolt. Now, both of these messages were internal emails to employees. As for the official PR stance that Activision Blizzard took, it's more along the lines of what Fran said, talking about how the DFEH has distorted and falsified facts describing Activision's past, just completely disbelieving the stories that employees, both former and current, have shared. And as all of this unfolds, we have seen a number of situations develop, starting with Activision Blizzard stock taking a nosedive, and this is going to be temporary, but I'll celebrate any blows against Activision Blizzard. Beyond that, we've got a letter, an open letter that thousands of Activision Blizzard employees have signed in solidarity. The signature count was at 1,000 current and former Activision Blizzard employees as of July 26, but that number has grown significantly, 2,500 as of July 27th, and then later that day, that number grew to over 3,200. And when you consider the fact that Activision Blizzard is made up of roughly 9,500 employees, with roughly half of them being from Blizzard specifically, which is the company where a lot of the allegations are being based around, that's a huge portion. As for the open letter itself, it highlighted how abhorrent and insulting the corporate response to all this has been, how unacceptable their dismissal of the claims and the lawsuit is, and they emphasize that they will not be silenced, they will not stand aside, and they will not give up. Additional developments include Blizzard responding to outcry against World of Warcraft by removing unspecified inappropriate references in the game, likely to do with references that the game makes to Alex Afrasiabi, creative director of World of Warcraft and one of the worst abusers at the company, so bad in fact that he was singled out in the lawsuit. NPCs bearing his name or that reference him can be found in the game currently. NPCs like Field Marshal Afrasiabi, as well as Lord Afrasastras. And given that these NPCs' names essentially honor one of the worst perpetrators within the company, someone who engaged in blatant sexual harassment and discrimination with little to no repercussions, as the lawsuit put it, the speculation is that World of Warcraft intends to remove these NPCs, or at the very least change their names. Beyond that, we have seen social media across all of Activision Blizzard and their franchises go completely silent over the past couple of days, whether that's a result of protest or a result of them acknowledging that tweeting out promotions for their games during this time would be inappropriate. That I'm not 100% clear on, but the disruption that all this has caused against Activision Blizzard is clear. Now, the open letter that thousands of both former and current Activision Blizzard employees signed, they concluded by stating that they will not be silenced, that they will not stand aside, and that they will not give up. And they're holding true to their words, as today, tons of Activision Blizzard employees are going on a strike and staging a walkout on July 28th, 2021. So this is happening as I'm speaking right now, as I'm recording this, and this is happening in front of the Blizzard HQ campus in Irvine, California, in protest of the company's executive response to the harassment lawsuit. Organizers of this walkout have also asked employees who may not be able to attend to stop working all day if they're able to, in solidarity of this protest. All of the details can be found in this Kotaku article, whose headline reads, Activision Blizzard employees plan walkout Wednesday to protest working conditions. Activision Blizzard employees are holding a formal walkout Wednesday, July 28th, which is today, calling on leadership to improve conditions for women, particularly women of color, transgender women, non-binary people, and other marginalized groups. Now, Interesting to note is that once word began to spread about this walkout, one way that Activision Blizzard is trying to save face is by ensuring that those who do engage in the walkout do get paid time off to participate, which, you know, that's good for the employees, but if Activision Blizzard believes that this is anywhere close to being enough to make up for all of the pain and misery that they've caused to victims of Activision Blizzard employees as a result of their negligence and complacency and their enabling, they're way off the mark. But hey, employees who do engage in this walkout will get paid, which is better than nothing. This strike and walkout will occur virtually from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and there's going to be a live event on campus from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. As far as the in-person event goes outside of Blizzard's campus, the turnout is expected to be 50 or more people, and I have one source who said that in a Slack channel organizing all of this, roughly 250 people responded saying that they will attend. Now that may seem like a low figure, but keep in mind that COVID-19 dangers still lurk, and so many people will be attending virtually and will not be working that day. Kotaku then shared a quote from an employee representative who said, "We're encouraging employees to take whatever time off they feel safe to do. Most of us plan to take the full day off without pay. Now we know that Activision Blizzard is planning to give them paid time off for this protest, but we understand some people like contractors and associates and those who are paid less than they deserve might not have the ability to do so." This finally brings us to the statement of intent that organizers of this walkout have issued and the demands that they have for leadership, which reads as follows. Given last week's statements from Activision Blizzard Inc. and their legal counsel regarding the DFEH lawsuit, as well as the subsequent internal statement from Francis Townsend and the many stories shared by current and former employees of Activision Blizzard since, we believe that our values as employees are not being accurately reflected in the words and actions of our leadership. As current Activision Blizzard employees, we're holding a walkout to call on the executive leadership team to work with us on the following demands in order to improve conditions for employees at the company, especially women, and in particular women of color and transgender women, non-binary people, and other marginalized groups. And highlighted here are 4 very clear demands. Number 1, an end to mandatory arbitration clauses in all employee contracts, current and future. Arbitration clauses protect abusers and limit the ability of victims to seek restitution. For those who don't know what mandatory arbitration is, here's an explanation from EPI.org that reads, American employers are increasingly requiring their workers to sign mandatory arbitration agreements. Under such agreements, workers whose rights are violated can't pursue their claims in court, but must submit to arbitration procedures that research shows overwhelmingly favor employers. An even more extensive summary can be found if we scroll down here. Mandatory arbitration is a controversial practice in which a business requires employees or consumers to agree to arbitrate legal disputes with the business rather than going through court. Although seemingly voluntary in that the employer consumer can choose whether or not to sign the arbitration agreement, in practice, signing the agreement is required if the individual wants to get the job or to obtain the cell phone, credit card, or other consumer product the business is selling. Mandatory arbitration agreements are legally enforceable and effectively bar employees or consumers from going to court, instead diverting legal claims into an arbitration procedure that is established by the agreement drafted by the company and required as a condition of employment or of doing business with it. So it's this awful contractual agreement where a business is allowed to set the conditions for how a dispute between employee and employer is resolved. And of course, stuff like that is going to favor the business. It's going to favor the abusers. It's going to favor the enablers. It's going to make it a lot less likely that the employer is held accountable for the enabling or for the direct engagement in abusive activities. And it's going to disadvantage the chances of a victim to gain any form of reparation. And so by getting rid of the mandatory arbitration clause, it gives more power to employees to be able to pursue matters legally, and that way abusers are less likely to engage, as it could mean they will actually get in trouble. Demand number 2, the adoption of recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and promotion policies designed to improve representation among employees at all levels, agreed upon by employees in a company-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion organization. Current practices have led to women, in particular women of color and transgender women, non-binary people, and other marginalized groups groups that are vulnerable to gender discrimination not being hired fairly for new roles when compared to men. We heard stories from the lawsuit about how women wouldn't be promoted because they may get pregnant and might impede their ability to do their jobs, which is blatant discrimination. The lawsuit also brought up an incident in which a woman of color was far more micromanaged than her colleagues, outlining an example where if that woman of color wanted some time off, she'd have to write like a one-page report on what she'd do during her time off when her other colleagues would not have to do that. And beyond all that, I mean, the current recruiting process is obviously deeply flawed given how many abusers, how many harassers, and how many perpetrators have managed to get into the company. Moving on, demand number 3, publication of data on relative compensation, including equity grants and profit sharing, promotion rates, and salary ranges for employees of all genders and ethnicities at the company. Current practices have led to aforementioned groups not being paid or promoted fairly, which harkens back to what I discussed previously about how women are less likely to be promoted within Activision Blizzard because of discriminatory reasons. But beyond that, the lawsuit has revealed that there is a wide margin of disparity between what men and women get paid for doing the exact same job, even if that same job is performed at a similar level of effort, performance, and efficiency. And even beyond that, there is the wider issue of the pay disparity between roles within the company, with executives in particular being paid ridiculous sums of money compared to the ground floor employees. That has led to revolts like employees sharing their salaries on a spreadsheet to really spotlight the ridiculous pay disparity and how unequal payment is within the company. Last but not least, demand number 4, empower a company-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to hire a third party to audit ABK's reporting structure, HR department, and executive staff. It is imperative to identify how current systems have failed to prevent employee harassment and to propose new solutions to address these issues. Essentially, hire third parties who are able to hold leadership and positions of power accountable so that they're not able to get away with negligence and complacency as they've been doing all these years. These are the departments that have the power to police abusers and harassers, but what happens when it's these departments that house abusers or enable abusers or ignore victims? Then there's simply no recourse for the ground floor employees who are powerless. And so we need an impartial third-party organization who can make sure that these departments and that leadership and executives are doing their jobs of protecting employees. We need third parties who can ensure that these departments suffer the consequences if they're not able to protect their employees adequately. The organizers of this walkout are also encouraging workers outside of Activision Blizzard, workers within the games industry at large, to encourage this protest, to spread word about this protest, to spread on social media the hashtag #ActiBlizzWalkout alongside a blue heart. And many developers, many prominent developers across the industry have already shared such tweets in solidarity, especially given that this isn't just an Activision Blizzard issue, it's an industry-wide issue. We heard what happened with Ubisoft, and before that we heard what happened with Riot, all with similar stories about a work culture that has enabled harassment, abuse, and discrimination. And beyond the hashtag, the organizers have also shared various links to charities that can be donated to support this cause. As for what the future holds for Activision Blizzard following the lawsuit and the employee protests, only time will tell. It really depends on how leadership respond. As far as the lawsuit goes, I hope that goes through fully, and I hope Activision Blizzard is held accountable for years and years of negligence and enabling this awful work culture. In terms of whether the employees' demands will be met, we'll have to wait and see, but it's hard to be optimistic when last year employees shared their salaries on a public spreadsheet in protest of the pay disparity within the company. The protest ultimately led to very little response, according to employees. It didn't really change much. But then again, this most recent protest feels a lot bigger than any other protest that has happened before within this company. So the hope is that this will disrupt Activision Blizzard enough that leadership will have no choice but to capitulate to these demands. To close this video off, I'd like to show you guys a letter from Activision CEO Bobby Kotick that he shared to all employees and that he released to the public. A letter that rings hollow, given how long it took for him to actually say something about the situation, and given that he is the head of the company that has enabled all of this for years, and only now that he's facing backlash, only now that this lawsuit is impending, only now that employees are mass protesting, that he's finally taken to express his sympathies and take some form of action. But let's not forget that this is the same guy who raked in $150 million while employees under him continue to be underpaid. This is the same guy who got so overpaid that shareholders were even upset at this situation. This is the same guy who prior to 2021 was reported to be making $40 million a year while some employees at Blizzard can't even make ends meet. This is the same guy who cut nearly 800 jobs back in 2019, despite record results in 2018, despite Activision Blizzard having made more money than ever. This right here, this whole statement, it's all about saving face. It's all about protecting corporate interests. It's all about responding to backlash and trying to mitigate a shitstorm rather than him actually caring about human beings. So with all that out of the way, let's read this letter. This has been a difficult and upsetting week, writes Bobby Kotick in his yacht. I want to recognize and thank all of those who have come forward in the past and in recent days. I so appreciate your courage. How patronizing does that come across? Every voice matters, he says, and we will do a better job of listening now and in the future. You have lost all right to utter the words, every voice matters, when under your leadership, every voice has not, in fact, mattered for years and years. We've seen constant displays of that with what happened with Blitzchung, with the pay disparities, with victims being ignored, with all of the allegations now coming up to the surface. You of all people, Bobby Kotick, are the least equipped to utter the words, every voice matters. He continues, our initial response to the issue we faced together. Together? Really, Bobby Kotick? You are not facing this issue at all. You and your executive team are sitting up there in your ivory tower. This isn't your issue. This is an issue for the folks working under you, for the human beings you're responsible for. But he says that our initial responses to the issues and to your concerns were quite frankly tone deaf. No, tone deaf is far too much of an understatement. The correct word you're looking for is evil. Your response was complete and utter evil. Responses whose top priority was to protect corporate interests over the human beings you have victimized and traumatized. It is imperative that we acknowledge all perspectives and experiences and respect the feelings of those who have been mistreated in any way. I am sorry that we did not provide the right empathy and understanding. He's just sorry that the responses garnered so much backlash. He doesn't even apologize for the years and years of Blizzard's awful work culture history. He's just apologizing for this specific instance, and even then, nobody believes that he's truly sorry for the responses that were issued. He's just sorry that he got caught. He's just sorry that he has to deal with all this shit. Bobby's slimy words continue. Many of you have told us that active outreach comes from caring so deeply for the company that so many people have reached out and shared thoughts, suggestions, and highlighted opportunities for improvement is a powerful reflection of how you care for our communities of colleagues and players and for each other. Ensuring that we have a safe and welcoming work environment is my highest priority. It never has been. All of a sudden, now that he's facing a massive lawsuit, a PR backlash of epic proportions, and mass employee revolt and protest, now all of a sudden it's his highest priority. The leadership team has heard you loud and clear. If it takes a mass lawsuit, mass community backlash, and mass employee protest to finally draw attention to issues that have permeated a company for years and years, then you're not equipped to lead it. Activision Blizzard is in dire need of a top-to-bottom leadership overhaul. The current leadership, no matter how much they say sorry and how they're listening now, too little too late. You have let this fester for too long. You've ignored these issues for too long. You shouldn't be running these companies. You shouldn't hold the positions that you do. He then says, we are taking swift action to be the compassionate, caring company you came to work for and to ensure a safe environment. There's no place anywhere at our company for discrimination, harassment, or unequal treatment of any kind. Well, the past many years say otherwise. We will do everything possible to make sure that together we improve and build a kind of inclusive workplace that is essential to foster creativity and inspiration. I've asked the law firm WilmerHale to conduct a review of our policies and procedures to ensure that we have and maintain best practices to promote a respectful and inclusive workplace. Will this law firm also be ousting the abusers, firing them, and also ensure that enablers are no longer working at this company? If perpetrators won't be punished to the level of severity that they deserve, then all of this is moot. The work will begin immediately. The WilmerHale team will be led by Stephanie Avakian, who is a member of the management team at WilmerHale and was most recently the director of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission's Division of Enforcement. We encourage anyone with an experience you believe violates our policies or in any way made you uncomfortable. You gotta love how Bobby Kotick frames that. It isn't if you've been traumatized, if you've been victimized. It's if you violate company policies or if you have felt uncomfortable. He won't even call the employees' experiences for what they truly are, trying to understate them instead. So yeah, we encourage anyone who have experienced these things in the workplace to use any of our many existing channels for reporting or to reach out to Stephanie. The existing channels for reporting don't work. That's the problem. There needs to be a major overhaul of existing systems and leadership. She and her team at WilmerHale will be available to speak with you on a confidential basis and can be reached at this contact information. Your outreach will be kept confidential, of course. No retaliation will be tolerated. We're committed to long-lasting change. Effective immediately, we'll be taking the following actions, and there are 5 core bullet points that have been outlined. Number 1, employee support. We will continue to investigate each and every claim and will not hesitate to take decisive action. To strengthen our capabilities in this area, we are adding additional senior staff and other resources to both the compliance team and the employee relations team. Unfortunately, Activision Blizzard has fostered such a high level of distrust for senior staff and people in positions of power that this stuff right here isn't necessarily the most comforting of initiatives. Number 2, listening sessions. We know many of you have inspired ideas on how to improve our culture. We'll be creating safe places moderated by third parties for you to speak out and share areas for improvement. But these outlets where employees are listened to won't amount to much if nothing is done with that feedback, which has been at the core of Activision Blizzard's work culture. Feedback and reports for employees would often be sent to the void, and nothing would be done with that feedback. So it's a matter of how proactive the company will be at taking this feedback and actually doing something with it. Number 3, personnel changes. We're immediately evaluating managers and leaders across the company. Anyone found to have impeded the integrity of our processes for evaluating claims and imposing appropriate consequences will be terminated. Personnel change is probably the most important part of this process. It's the personnel who foster this culture, especially those in a position of power who haven't used their power correctly, who have abused their power. Now, something that worries me here is the wording and how it doesn't say that abusers will be terminated. It says that only those who have impeded in the process of finding abusers will be terminated. What this statement should say is basically anyone who engaged in any form of inappropriate behavior or have enabled inappropriate behavior will be terminated effective immediately. And even if this bullet point was worded properly, there is no guarantee whatsoever that Bobby Kotick will actually terminate people in positions of power, especially those that he is close with, those who have benefited him and his company greatly. That's what happened with Ubisoft. While there were some high-profile names who were ousted from the company, unfortunately, there are still reports that well-known and prominent abusers still remain at the company in positions of power. And given this is Activision Blizzard we're talking about, I'm not confident that all of them will actually be ousted. It also bears mentioning that by this definition right here, anyone found to have impeded in the integrity of our processes for evaluating claims and imposing appropriate consequences will be terminated. Bobby Kotick should terminate himself. He should terminate J. Allen Brack. He should terminate Fran Townsend. But is that going to happen? No, of course not, because certain executives, certain managers, certain people in positions of leadership and power will get special treatment. That's just the nature of the beast. Number 4, hiring practices. Earlier this year, I sent an email requiring all hiring managers to ensure they have diverse candidates slates for all open positions. We'll be adding compliance resources to ensure that our hiring managers are in fact adhering to this directive. Number 5, in-game changes. We have heard the input from employee and player communities that some of our in-game content is inappropriate, namely the inclusion of names in games like World of Warcraft that honor employees who were perpetrators and abusers. We're removing that content. Your well-being remains my priority, and I will spare no company resource ensuring that our company has the most welcoming, comfortable, and safe culture possible. You have my unwavering commitment that we will improve our company together, and we will be the most inspiring, inclusive entertainment company in the world. Yours sincerely, Bobby. Coming from the CEO who is the root cause of so many of Activision Blizzard's issues and woes, This entire statement is just so freaking laughable. If you're really committed to the betterment of Activision Blizzard as a company and place of employment that is responsible for real human lives, then resign. Stop pretending like you're not at the center of Activision Blizzard's rot and step down. Leave and never come back. But of course that's not going to happen. Much like how Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot has yet to fire himself for his own failures, Bobby Kotick, it's not in his nature to actually take accountability. It's not in his nature to prioritize human beings over self-preservation and the corporate interests of the company. What does give me hope, however, is this impending lawsuit and the mass protest from employees and all of these things that are forcing these evil motherfuckers to actually capitulate to the demands of employees, as the kind of pressure that they're facing right now means that they may not have a choice. So fingers crossed that employees can bring about the change that they deserve. But until then, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on these new developments, the walkout and strike that employees have organized, and the letter from CEO Bobby Kotick. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.